It started with an empty house. That's how I remember it. The silence. The quiet hum of the refrigerator, the stillness in the air. When Clara left that night, I thought it was just another evening to myself. Another one of those nights where she'd be out with friends, and I'd be left here, drifting in my own thoughts, trying to occupy my time until she came home. I'd been fine with it, at first. You get used to things, right? The rhythm of a relationship. I didn't mind it. These nights alone were a part of our dynamic. We didn't need to be attached at the hip every second. But something was different this time. It wasn't that she didn't tell me where she was going. She did. It wasn't that she was being secretive. She'd mentioned she was going to meet some friends at a local bar. It was nothing out of the ordinary. But when she left that night, something clicked inside me. It wasn't just a regular evening. It was the feeling of being left behind, the sudden, unmistakable certainty that something was changing. And I could feel it in my gut. She kissed me goodbye, just like always, but her lips were colder than usual, her touch just a bit more distant. It was subtle, so subtle, I didn't think much of it at first. But as soon as the door clicked shut behind her, I couldn't ignore the creeping sense of unease that crawled over me. I didn't hear from her for hours. It was strange. Clara had always been good about texting me when she was out. Even if it was just a quick, "Hey, everything's fine, I'll be home soon." But there was nothing. Just silence. At first, I convinced myself it was nothing. She was probably having a great time, chatting with people, losing track of the time. She was always like that, so social, so caught up in the moment. I tried to occupy myself with mundane things, watching a bit of TV, checking my emails, scrolling through social media. But every time I looked at my phone, there was no message from her. The longer I sat there, the more restless I became. The house felt smaller, somehow. I kept glancing at the clock. 10 p.m., 11 p.m., still nothing. The emptiness in the house seemed to grow with every minute, each tick of the clock amplifying the distance between us. I couldn't help but feel this gnawing, hollow sensation that something was off. I tried to push it aside. It's just me overthinking, but the feeling wouldn't let go. I paced around the living room. It was getting late now. Too late. And still, no word from Clara. What's going on? I grabbed my phone again. This time, I stared at her contact name for longer than usual. I hesitated, but eventually, I sent her a simple text. "How's everything going? You okay?" The message sent. And then, nothing. I clicked the read receipt just to see if she'd even read it. But I noticed something strange. It said delivered, but there was no read status. My phone buzzed a few moments later, but it wasn't Clara. It was a notification from an app one had forgotten I installed months ago. I didn't even pay attention to it. But the nagging thought kept pushing itself into my head. What's going on? By 1 a.m., I'd had enough. I told myself to stop being dramatic. Clara was fine. I was just being paranoid. She's probably drunk, or maybe she's caught up talking to some old friend she hasn't seen in a while. I grabbed my coat, stepped out of the apartment, and made my way to the bar where she said she'd be. I told myself it wasn't a big deal. I wasn't worried. But the second I turned the corner and saw the flashing neon lights of the bar, something inside me snapped. I felt a strange sense of clarity, like I was in a movie, and this was the moment when everything would unravel. The bar was loud, a chaotic mix of voices and clinking glasses. People spilled out onto the sidewalk, laughing, talking, leaning on each other in ways that seemed a little too intimate for casual friends. The moment I stepped inside, the heat of the room hit me, and I paused for a moment, letting my eyes adjust. There she was, Clara. But it wasn't just Clara. She was laughing, her head thrown back in that way she does when she's genuinely having fun. But there was someone else beside her, a man. I didn't know who he was, but he was standing a little too close, his hand on her arm, his smile just a little too familiar. She wasn't pushing him away. She wasn't even noticing the space between them. I froze. Something in me told me to turn around and leave, to not get caught in whatever this was. But I couldn't move. Her laughter rang through the room as she leaned in a little closer to him. She looked happy, happier than I'd seen her in weeks. And in that moment, I realized. I had no idea who this person was anymore. I didn't want to confront her. Not now, not like this. I didn't want to ruin the night. But as I stood there, watching them, I felt this cold certainty fill my chest. Something had changed. And it wasn't just Clara. It was me. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Clara was always so careful, so aware of boundaries. Yet there she was, laughing freely, leaning into a man I didn't know, sharing a moment that didn't feel like it belonged in the world I knew. My heart pounded, and my mind raced. It was like I'd stumbled into a scene from someone else's life. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, my feet glued to the floor, watching them, unable to move. Clara's smile was genuine, her eyes sparkling in a way I hadn't seen in months. She was having fun, real fun, the kind of fun she used to have before things became routine. It wasn't like I thought she was cheating on me, at least not yet. But there was something about the way she was with this guy that didn't sit right. It was like she was forgetting where she belonged, who she belonged to. I could feel the weight of my own insecurities creeping in, but I didn't want to admit it. I had to see more. I had to know if my suspicions were justified, or if I was just overreacting. But as I took a step forward, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, almost grateful for the distraction. It was a text from Clara. "Hey, I'm having a great time. Don't wait up, I'll be home late. Love you." The words were innocent enough, but there was something about them that made my stomach turn. Why did she feel the need to mention how late she'd be? Why did she leave out so many details about who she was with? I texted back, trying to play it cool, but inside, my thoughts were all over the place. "Have fun, just be careful. Text me when you get home." I shoved the phone back in my pocket and took a deep breath. I couldn't stand here forever. But as I watched Clara and this man again, I felt a cold wave of uncertainty wash over me. I had to go. I had to leave before I saw something I couldn't unsee. I turned to head back towards the door, but just before I did, I heard Clara's voice. "Stan?" My heart froze. There she was, standing at the edge of the crowd, her eyes wide in surprise. She had seen me. I hadn't been careful enough. She looked almost shocked, maybe even a little embarrassed. I couldn't tell, but as she took a step toward me, her expression shifted. That's when I noticed it. It wasn't guilt, or anger, or even confusion. It was something else. Something colder. Something I didn't recognize. "Stan, what are you doing here?" Her voice was a little too calm, a little too composed. It was like she was trying to hide something, or like she wasn't quite the same person I thought I knew. I tried to smile, to act casual, but my insides were screaming. I was just worried about you. You didn't text me back, and I thought I'd come check in." She glanced at the man who was still standing there, awkwardly holding his drink. His presence was somehow heavier now. His eyes darted between us, and he took a step back, as if sensing the tension. Clara gave him a quick, almost dismissive look before returning her attention to me. "You didn't have to come all the way down here, Stan," she said, her voice still too calm, too controlled. "I'm fine. Just catching up with old friends." I nodded, but I wasn't sure if I believed her. Something in the way she spoke, in the way she avoided my gaze, told me there was more to the story than she was letting on. I wanted to ask her about the guy, about the way they were standing so close, about the laughter and the shared moments, but I didn't. Not yet. I wasn't ready to confront her. Not here, not like this. "Okay," I said, trying to sound casual. "I'll go then. Just text me when you get home, all right?" She nodded, her smile returning, but it was forced this time. It didn't reach her eyes. As I turned to leave, I felt the weight of her stare on my back. The door swung open, and I stepped into the cool night air, trying to calm my racing heart. The truth was, I had no idea what I'd just witnessed, but I knew I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't just walk away and pretend everything was fine. Something had changed, and I wasn't sure if it was Clara or if it was me. But whatever it was, I was going to find out. The cold air outside hit me like a slap to the face. I walked briskly, not knowing where I was going, but needing to get away from that scene. Clara's face, her cold, distant smile, kept replaying in my mind. Something was off, something I couldn't place. But I wasn't ready to confront it yet. I told myself I'd go home, take a breath, and let it all settle. But the further I walked, the more the weight of the night pressed down on me. My phone buzzed in my pocket again. It was Clara. "Stan, I'm sorry if I worried you. Everything is fine. I'll be home late, but I promise I'm okay. Love you." I stared at the screen for a moment, then put it back in my pocket without replying. It was the same message she had sent before. The same reassurances. The same calm, perfect words. But it didn't feel right. I wasn't stupid. I knew there was something Clara wasn't telling me. She was too guarded tonight, too careful in her words. And that man, whoever he was, had no business being so close to her. I didn't care how innocent it seemed. It wasn't normal. Something was changing, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. I walked aimlessly for another hour, trying to clear my mind, but it was no use. I needed answers. I needed to understand why she was acting this way, why everything felt different. When I finally made it back home, the house felt empty, quieter than ever. I sat on the couch, staring at the blank TV screen, my mind racing. Every little detail, every look, every word Clara had said. It all swirled around in my head, and none of it made sense. Then the phone buzzed again. Clara. Stan, please don't overthink this. I'm with friends. Everything's fine. See you soon. It was the same message, just packaged differently. The same calm, distant tone. She hadn't even asked how I was doing. She hadn't seemed concerned in the slightest. That's when I knew. The distance was growing, and I couldn't just sit here pretending everything was okay. I needed to see the truth for myself. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door again. No more waiting. No more doubts. I had to get to the bottom of this. I drove back to the bar, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I tried to steady my breath, but it was impossible. The thought of Clara being out there, so far removed from me, with someone else, it gnawed at me. Every instinct told me to just go home, to trust her and move on, but I couldn't. Not now. The city felt different tonight. The streets were darker, quieter. The lights from the bar flickered in the distance, taunting me, making my stomach twist into knots. I parked a block away, as I had done earlier, and walked back towards the entrance. My footsteps echoed in the empty night. When I reached the door, I hesitated for just a moment. I wasn't sure what I was expecting to find, but I couldn't turn back. The need for answers outweighed my doubts. I stepped inside. The bar hadn't changed since the last time I was here. The same dim lights, the same hum of conversation, the same music playing faintly in the background. But it felt colder this time, heavier. I scanned the room quickly, searching for Clara. There she was, sitting at a booth near the back. But this time, something was different. She was alone. No man beside her. The guy who had been so close earlier was nowhere to be seen. I took a deep breath, not sure whether to feel relieved or more suspicious. Clara was laughing with a friend, someone I hadn't seen before. The laughter was genuine, the kind I hadn't heard in a while. I watched her for a moment, as if studying her. The way she moved, the way she talked. It was like she didn't even notice I was standing there. It was almost as if the woman I knew was gone, replaced by someone else. But I still wasn't sure what was really happening. I made my way over to the booth, trying to stay calm, trying to keep my heart from racing. When Clara saw me, her face lit up, but only for a split second. Then it flickered, just enough for me to notice. The smile was polite, almost forced. "Stan, what are you doing here?" she asked, her voice a little too bright, a little too casual. I stood there for a moment, unsure of what to say. I hadn't planned this. I hadn't planned to confront her, not yet. But now, seeing her face, hearing her voice, I couldn't just walk away again. I was worried. I said simply, trying to sound normal, trying to hide the storm brewing inside me. "You've been gone a while. Thought I'd check in." Her friend smiled awkwardly, standing up to excuse herself. Clara nodded at her, and the woman left the booth, leaving Clara and me alone. There it was, the space between us. The tension I couldn't ignore. Clara looked at me, a little too carefully. "I told you I'd be fine. It's just a night out, Stan. You didn't have to come down here." "I know," I said. My voice felt tight, like I was forcing the words out. "But it's not just about that, Clara. I've been thinking about things. About you. About us." She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her fingers tapping the side of her glass, her gaze avoiding mine. There it was again, distance. That gap between us, wide enough that it felt like we were strangers. "Stan, we've been through this before. I'm just with friends. You know I need my space sometimes." She was starting to sound more defensive now, like she was trying to convince herself as much as she was trying to convince me. "But you didn't mention him," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. I couldn't help it. My mind kept going back to the way she'd been with that man earlier, how easily they'd interacted. I wanted to believe it was nothing, that I was just overthinking things, but deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being lied to. Clara's face froze for just a moment. Then she quickly composed herself. "Him? He's just a guy I met through Megan. He's harmless. Really, you're blowing this out of proportion." Her voice was cool, controlled, but there was an edge to it now, something defensive, as if she wasn't just trying to protect herself, but also something I wasn't meant to see. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. The last thing I wanted to do was make a scene. But the doubt, the unanswered questions, it was all too much to ignore. I'm not trying to blow anything out of proportion, I said, keeping my voice low. I need to understand what's happening, Clara. You've been distant lately. I don't know what's going on, but I need to know. Clara's expression softened, but just barely. Stan, nothing's happening. You're just overthinking everything. I've told you already, I'm fine. I didn't know whether to believe her or not. Something in my gut told me I wasn't getting the whole story, but I had no proof. All I had was a gut feeling. I'll be home soon, she added, standing up quickly. I promise. Everything's fine. As I watched her walk away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. The way she had acted, the way she had said those words, it didn't add up. And I was starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the one who had been overthinking it all along. The drive home was a blur. I don't even remember the route I took, just the pounding in my chest and the cold emptiness that seemed to grow with every mile. Clara's words echoed in my mind, but they didn't offer the comfort they should have. She was fine, everything was fine, and I was just overthinking things. But that's not what I felt. By the time I pulled into the driveway, I was a mess. I couldn't sleep, couldn't stop thinking about the way she'd looked at me when I asked about the man. There was something in her eyes, a flicker of something that wasn't right. I sat in my car for a while, staring at the house, wondering if I should just let it go. Maybe I was reading too much into things. Maybe she really was just with friends. But deep down, I knew I wasn't imagining it. I waited until after 3 a.m. to hear the sound of the front door opening. Clara was home, her footsteps soft against the hardwood floor. I stayed in bed, pretending to sleep, but my eyes were wide open, staring at the ceiling. I heard her moving around in the kitchen, the faint clink of dishes. I didn't know what to do, whether to confront her again or just let it be. But then I heard her voice, softer than usual, as if she was trying not to wake me. She was on the phone. It wasn't with me. I sat up slowly, straining to hear. Yeah, I'll be home tomorrow. I just needed a little more time. Everything's fine. Stan's still clueless. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I wanted to rush downstairs, to storm into the kitchen and demand answers, but I stayed still. I couldn't move. My whole body was frozen. I heard a pause. I don't know how long I can keep this up, but we'll figure it out. It's just hard, you know? The words hit me like a wave. My stomach churned, the room spinning as I processed what I'd just heard. Clara, my wife, was hiding something from me. And it wasn't just a harmless secret. There was someone else. I heard the faint click of the phone hanging up, and then silence. I waited. I couldn't bring myself to face her, to ask what was going on. I wanted to, but something told me that once I did, there would be no going back. Clara tiptoed into our bedroom, but I pretended to be asleep. I could feel her eyes on me as she slid under the covers, but I didn't move. For the first time in years, I couldn't trust her. And that realization was worse than anything else. The next morning, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed. I woke up with a headache, the remnants of that cold, sleepless night lingering in my mind. Clara was already in the kitchen, moving around quietly, her presence almost too normal, too calm. It was as if nothing had happened, as if I hadn't just overheard her whispering on the phone about keeping it up and figuring it out. I tried to focus on the mundane, on the routine, but my mind kept racing. How could she be so casual? How could she look at me like everything was fine after what I'd just heard? I felt like I was living in a parallel reality, a world where I no longer knew her. She glanced over at me, her eyes bright, as if nothing was wrong. "Morning," she said, her voice a little too light. She poured herself a cup of coffee, the steam rising from the mug, and I couldn't stop watching her. There was a strange calmness about her, as though she knew something I didn't. "Morning," I mumbled, not quite meeting her eyes. The silence between us felt thick, and yet, she didn't seem to notice. She smiled, the same smile she always gave me in the mornings, but this time it didn't feel like it belonged. It felt rehearsed, like a mask she was wearing. I wanted to say something, to confront her, but the words caught in my throat. She walked past me, brushing her hand lightly over my shoulder. I felt a chill run down my spine. It was as if she were a stranger, someone who knew me but didn't really see me. I wanted to ask her about the phone call, about the things I'd overheard, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Not yet. It wasn't just about what I'd heard. It was the way she'd said those words. Stand still, clueless. That was the moment everything shifted for me. It wasn't just a casual secret or a harmless lie. She had been hiding something from me. And now, I was the fool who hadn't seen it. I sat there in silence, pretending to eat my breakfast, trying to act normal. But my mind was miles away, running through all the possibilities. Who was she talking to? Why didn't she care enough to tell me what was really going on? Just then, she spoke again, pulling me out of my thoughts. Stan, she said, her voice soft. I'm going to visit Megan today. She's been asking me to help with something. I'll be gone for a few hours. The words should have sounded normal, just like any other day. But they didn't. The way she said it, the way she avoided looking at me, it all felt like a script. She was hiding something, and it was right there, in front of me, waiting to be discovered. I wanted to tell her that I wasn't going to let this go. I wanted to demand the truth, to force her to open up. But I didn't. Instead, I nodded, my mouth dry, and muttered, okay. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, not once looking back. I stayed seated, staring at the empty space where she had just been. For the first time, I realized how alone I felt. She was slipping away, piece by piece, and I was just sitting there, watching it happen. I didn't know how much longer I could pretend that everything was fine. The lies, the secrets, they were all building up, and sooner or later, something was going to break. And when it did, I wasn't sure if I would be able to put the pieces back together. The hours after Clara left felt like a haze. I couldn't focus on anything. The weight of the silence in the house was unbearable. I tried to busy myself, to do something, anything, to distract myself from the gnawing feeling in my gut. But it didn't work. I kept thinking about her, about that phone call, about the fact that she had been lying to me, or at least hiding something. I couldn't stop myself from replaying every moment in my mind. The way she smiled, the way she brushed me off when I asked about the guy at the bar. It didn't add up. The woman I had married wasn't acting like herself. She was distant, evasive. It was like she was living in a different world, one that didn't include me. I grabbed my phone and looked at her contact. I considered texting her, asking her straight out what was going on. But I knew I wouldn't get a real answer. Clara was too good at hiding things, too practiced at pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. Instead, I did something I never thought I would. I searched through her messages. I knew it wasn't right, that I was crossing a line, but in that moment, I didn't care. I had to know. I scrolled through conversations, looking for anything that stood out, any sign that would explain the strange behavior I had been witnessing. And there it was. A message from a number I didn't recognize, buried under a string of texts from the past few weeks. Are you sure we can keep doing this? What about Stan? I froze. The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. It was a message from a man. I couldn't believe it. Clara had been talking to someone else, someone she hadn't told me about. Someone who was clearly involved in something more than just a friendship. I clicked on the conversation, my hands shaking as I read through the rest of the messages. They were careful, cryptic, like they were trying to cover their tracks. But there was no mistaking it. Clara was hiding something. She was involved with this person in a way that went beyond casual. I can't keep doing this forever. He's starting to notice. The realization hit me hard. Clara had been seeing someone else. Not just the guy from the bar, but someone else entirely. I don't know what I had expected to find, but this was the last thing I had imagined. She had been lying to me for months. She'd been hiding her tracks, pretending everything was normal, all the while she had been seeing someone else. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. Everything I thought I knew about my life, about my marriage, was a lie. My mind spun, and for a moment, I just sat there, numb. I didn't know what to do with the truth I had just uncovered. Part of me wanted to confront her right then, to demand answers, to make her explain herself. But another part of me, something darker, something deeper, knew that I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. I closed the phone and sat back, my heart racing. The anger and betrayal started to rise up inside me, but I swallowed it down. I had to think this through. I had to be careful. The truth was, Clara was no longer the person I thought she was. And whatever this was, whatever was happening between her and this man, was something far deeper than I had ever imagined. The next steps were clear. I needed to know everything. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. Not this time. But as I sat there, trying to control the storm inside me, one thought kept echoing in my mind. I had no idea how deep this rabbit hole went. The following days felt like a blur. I had all the information, but I still didn't know what to do with it. Every moment I spent alone, the anger and betrayal simmered inside me. Clara and I were barely speaking. The silence between us had become suffocating, and every time I looked at her, I saw the weight of the lies hanging in the air. But then, something unexpected happened. Clara came to me. It was late in the evening. I was sitting in the living room, staring at the walls, lost in my thoughts, when I heard her footsteps. She stood in the doorway, hesitating for a moment before she spoke. "Stan, we need to talk." The words felt like a shock to my system. I'd been expecting an argument, a confrontation, maybe even more lies. But there was something in her voice, something I hadn't heard in a long time. It was raw, vulnerable. It was the sound of a person finally ready to face the truth. I didn't say anything at first. I just nodded, motioning for her to sit down. We both remained silent for a few moments, the weight of everything hanging between us. I couldn't bring myself to speak, not yet. My mind was still racing, trying to figure out how to process everything. Clara finally broke the silence. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "I owe you an explanation. And I'm so sorry. I've been lying to you. I've been lying to myself, too. I've been seeing someone else, and I shouldn't have let it get this far." I didn't know what to say. The words I had been rehearsing in my head, the accusations, the anger, felt pointless now. I just sat there, waiting for her to continue. She took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she spoke. "It wasn't just about him, though. It was about me, about how lost I've been feeling. I've been pushing you away because I've been too afraid to admit that I was changing. I felt like I didn't know who I was anymore, and I thought, maybe I could escape it for a while." I could see the pain in her eyes now, the guilt. It wasn't just about the affair, it was about her, about us. I could see that she was genuinely struggling with what had happened. "I don't know what's wrong with me," she whispered, "but I want to fix it. I want to be honest with you. I want to rebuild what we had." My heart was heavy, torn between the pain of what she'd done and the part of me that still loved her. I didn't know if I could forgive her yet, but I knew one thing. I couldn't just let go without trying to understand, without trying to heal. I stood up, walking over to where she sat. I could see the fear in her eyes, the fear of losing me forever. I put a hand on her shoulder, a gesture that felt so natural, yet so foreign after everything. "We can try," I said, my voice soft but steady. "But it won't be easy, and it won't be quick. We have a lot of work to do." She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I'm ready, Stan. I know it won't be easy, but I want to make it right. I need to make it right." We didn't have all the answers that night. We didn't fix everything in one conversation, but it was a start. It was a chance to rebuild, to be honest with each other, to find our way back. Over time, things began to shift. Clara and I went through therapy together. We talked more. We listened. Slowly, we learned to trust again. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't without its struggles, but we both knew that we wanted to fight for what we had. And in the end, we came out stronger. Not because we had no mistakes or no scars, but because we chose to face the truth, to be vulnerable, and to heal together. In a way, the lies had torn us apart, but in the end, they also brought us back together. Sometimes, the truth is hard to face, but it can also be the thing that saves you.